This is a story of three tribes. For the Maisin, it's a story of deceit. For the Kasua, it's a story of bitterness.
And
for the Kamula, it's the story of a slim chance of hope.
We thought that the development would come in, so we signed, but I'm not sure. I don't know what's going on.
Through stormy Solomon Sea waters, John Vaso's coming home, but there's a lot on his mind. John is a Maisin clan chief with some important news on the future of his people. A tribe living here in one of Melanesia's last stands of truly untouched rainforest, a land now besieged by government-backed loggers.
The government wants to take out as much as it can from the resource of the people, and not knowing that whilst doing that, the government is really making the people poor, and eventually end up having nothing left for the generation to come.
Maisin warriors ask no questions. A few decades ago, landing here meant certain death. Those unlucky enough to survive were staked out in the village for a few days before being eaten. Today's reception is largely ceremonial, but these same warriors threatened war when they discovered their land was about to be logged without their permission.
All these logging deals were done up in the national level, and there's not been a single consent from the people, the landowners themselves.
The homecoming for this clan chief is more than ceremonial. Just 2 weeks from the first cut, John won a temporary injunction against the logging. But the fight for their land is far from over. What happens if you lose in the courts?
We'll take a law into our own hands. Those people who signed away in this land, and those developers who are going to come in here, they will have to come in at their own risk. We will just have to kill everybody around this place. We will look at a second Bougainville here. And that I speak on behalf of the people.
But is militant ecology enough for a people faced with the pressures and temptations of modern life?
What's happening in Maisin shows that the procedures and processes can be disregarded. With the flick of the pen, somebody's signed away a whole place, land, life.
Former Ambassador to the United States, Meg Taylor, fears logging deals are now fueling the breakdown of the state.
The real issue here is where the independent state of Papua New Guinea and the mini-sovereign state of communities, landowning groups, are now coming to a loggerhead.
John Vaso's not defending a poor life. People here are taking gradually from the developed world, Educated Maisins bring in some cash and they're experimenting with renewable forest business.
We are not ignorant of the fact that development needs to come to the people. But if there's to be development, the Maisin people have to initiate that development, and they have to be the implementers of that development.
Why, though, if you're the traditional owners of the land, did this almost get logged?
The ministers themselves are responsible for the whole lot of these backdoor dealings. And this is where the ministers pull off and become millionaires themselves.
Corruption.
Corruption takes place.
Just a few hours north of his village, you can see what John's worried about. Having raped their own land, much of Indonesia, Southeast Asia and the Melanesian islands, the Malaysian logging machine is now ripping into the region's last great stands of primary rainforest, here in Papua New Guinea.
Their life is very simple. So we take all these logs go out, and they get the money, the royalty, the money.
This is commercial clear felling at its worst. 100, 200-year-old trees felled for the rapacious Asian market. Some will end up as furniture, others become chopsticks and concrete formwork. Landowners here have sold their birthright for a bush house and temporary royalties. And this is their future. Forests felled for oil palm, a cash crop being planted across Papua New Guinea. It earns peanuts for the landowners and leaves them totally reliant on the price of a single commodity. This is all the result of the desperate measures taken by a desperate and incompetent government, a government which ran Papua New Guinea's economy into the ground. Prime Minister Bill Skate may have had his 15 minutes of fame and infamy by selling diplomatic recognition to Taipei for soft loans. But his most tragic and long-lasting legacy has been to order the fast-tracking of up to 15 large logging concessions in a frantic bid for foreign funds.
It's a push driven by the economic downturn, bad economic management, which has resulted in currency crash and shortage of foreign exchange, balance of payments, and general shortage of cash in Treasury.
Where's the 146?
Lawyer Brian Brunton is taking the battle against logging to the government. It was he who helped John Vaso's Maisin people stay the chainsaws for now, and it was a landmark win. While he won that battle, he's far from winning the war. At the other end of the country, Bill Skate's backroom deals now threaten one of the globe's greatest living treasures.
It saw an expanded logging industry as one way out. But there are also other pressures. The loggers themselves wanted more resources. They wanted to be able to tie up very big areas.
Deep in PNG's remote western province is the world's biggest tropical rainforest outside the Amazon. It's one of the last great lungs of the earth. Its sheer undisturbed size makes it unique, a home for rare species, a sanctuary for entire ecospheres of life, animal and human, not yet fully explored or understood. It's so remote, not one road scars its pristine face.
time custom place na osem push plomibla na osem wara plomibla na history ground na desra something emosem bagra bogotana.
John Tania is a clan chief of the Kasua people. This is his land, his river, and by his tradition, travel is a family affair. Understanding their anger is easy, but trying to find your feet on these swift currents a little harder.
Almost went for a swim.
Oh, Ebama.
What appears to the outsider a forbidding tangle is to the Kasua a living, breathing, self-stocking supermarket.
Blomibla long finding mabus na blomibla long establo here. Na tubuna ibini kam establo this block around.
On a good day, a line over the side can catch a 2-kilo barramundi. But today there's no time for fishing. Loggers are already on the Kasua's land, and if John doesn't stop them, the rivers will silt and there'll be no fish.
Company, machine blungen, sa bagara destroy mo kata something. Osem ne mi play no amaslo something because mi play no come up crawl down no sit one map mi play no sa stop by na kaike no gat. Mi play sa kisim no bus na kaike. Osem na nuko to mi play sa machine go bus blo mi play na bagara o the animal blo mi play na o the kaike blo mi play wara blo mi play mi play no like this blo kain pass.
What's wrong with that if they bring money and they bring development to John and his family and village?
Kulla truth asol mibla time before time company like come inside lo bush blo mibla kiamani mibla na krisi mibla na talk mibla by giving mibla lo house na ogata something load ogata something by mibla kan kim kulla service blo mibla taso sindan blo mibla by mibla kan give kulla sindan blo mibla taso now company kiamani mibla time mibla signing agreement time
John wants us to see what he's worried about, but first we must seek spiritual permission.
We walk through.
Okay.
And pass through the entrance. And we got some Masrai established this place. Osem now talk. No can equal nothing. You must go inside long. Money sawe long and happy me DY stop. You go inside. And now by you sim life one time sim down blue Euro behind too by all this DY by saving you.
But no one's been able to look after the trees. Logging tracks now dissect John's land, the big trees are gone, and the loggers will soon be back to finish it off. Looking around here, there's still lots of trees. So what's wrong with this now?
After 10 years, they will cut in Ken on this area. Also, na two all like pranim world farm. One them na number 3 and more like him one them Frywood mill lo tamblo all like in this area long.
With the help of a few modern tools, the Kasua are among the last hunter-gatherers on Earth. Not that that's such good news for the wildlife. Although the blue-crested wild pigeon does make a pretty tasty lunch. For the Kasua, these trees are bound with food and medicine. Their branches are heavy with history and religion. It may be plentiful, but life in the forest isn't easy. And when cold cash brought the promise of outboards and shotguns, John naturally signed a deal to allow logging on his land. There's only one problem. He wasn't allowed to read the agreement.
People ask him all long, Mibla like lithium permit one time agreement. Osemne Mibla try ma ask him tasol. Odino giving Mibla long copy.
John isn't totally against some logging, but he's so angry with the way it's being done now, he's seeking a court action to stop the company and renegotiate.
What are these for?
First, by Mibla testing more long 1 year, Mibla looking mosem or company working Kudla house, na Kudla service must come up to people. And by Mibla to okay, 5 years by Mibla can sign him again. 1 year, only working good. And by Mibla to finish. Company no can come cutting the white below Mibla. Mibla yet by Mibla can cutting the white.
The company's response was to offer him money to resolve the dispute.
Meeting all picking in blow me, pitcher blow, picking in blow me. No to me making motion now, that the white blow me, bush blow me, and motion company by destroy more than something finish, and take off we go finish. The end no picking in blow me by stop suffer. And no minoxim money.
Just downstream is the sharp edge of John's concerns, the mill that's meant to offer the Kasua people progress. But jobs here are poorly paid, temporary, and usually occupied by outsiders. For each cubic metre of this timber, exporters earn about $75 US, of which they pay the landowners less than 4.
Hi, how are you? How are you?
Oh, fine, thank
Working
you.
hard, eh?
Once I'd tracked him down, Malaysian mill manager James Hsu sees nothing wrong with the
A
deal.
lot of things.
Of course, this area is primitive, so they have to clear all these things, and then some projects will be carried on to replace the forest.
So like oil palm.
Yeah.
But that means taking all the tree, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the company's idea of fair compensation. The timber town of Kamusi is what landowners like John get for their irreplaceable inheritance. Ignored by government, the clinic and houses are built by the company. But no one here believes the roads, buildings, or even occasional businesses will last beyond the company's interest in their trees.
The government has had this series of very unfair contracts which it imposes upon landowners that I once described this as bureaucratic feudalism, that the government takes away your trees because essentially it doesn't think you've got the brains to manage them, and then it mismanages them on its own.
The government has provided a police force of sorts for Kamusi, not to make sure the company keeps its promises, but to back the loggers against landowner complaints.
Is there something in Bagrapinis, custom press blow me pla? I'm kissing telephone, go to passport. Karim come, you. Oh man, fighting nothing, oh yeah, man. Or shoot him, nothing, dog. Me triple dog, or shoot him block 3. Me papa glam.
John isn't alone. That night, we're visited by a delegation of landowners, all angry with the company.
Company and bagger up in all together. Or you know, put him in government service lawyer. Government too, I mean, look good on me. But all get a benefit in government, the company. Now me, Papa Gilam, me step Emit, me step Lord, Pipia.
Our meeting closes with a song lamenting lost lands. leaving the mudflats of Kosuwa behind, the next river holds the secrets of what may be the greatest tragedy of all. This is the land of the Kamula people. It's here, despite all the concerns, the same company has just won a massive logging extension. 800,000 hectares, twice as big as their existing lease, 8 times the size of Hong Kong, a $1 billion jackpot for the loggers. But here in Wawi Falls, deep in the heart of the extension, the deal has raised some disturbing questions among the Kamula. PNG's own forest authority, the chief advisory body, strongly recommended against the extension, arguing that if it had to be logged at all, then it should at least be put out to public tender for competitive pricing and better practices. The government ignored the advice. And the man you'd think most interested in stopping logging instead strongly backed the loggers' claim.
What's the alternative? I mean, what's the alternative? In a country, developing, emerging country like this, what do you want for the people? Do you want to preserve them in a picturesque poverty? Don't you want those people to have the basic services and the benefits like all other people in other developing countries?
The decision has divided the Kamula. Some want the cash from logging and think they can dictate the terms. They forget these days it's the loggers calling the tune.
Are you convinced that the logging operations, the way they run at the moment, in fact bring sustainable development?
I get complaints, I get complaints from Western Province, from all over the country on environment destruction and environment damage. And it's not just Western Province, it's all over the country. I don't have the money to send the expertise down there to do environment audit.
Such a crippled bureaucracy is among the legacies of Bill Skate's last desperate days in office. Legacies that helped freeze World Bank funds from Papua New Guinea.
It's in the area of forests that Papua New Guinea has broken so many promises that the World Bank essentially has spat the dummy and said, we are not dealing with you until you get your forests in order.
As part of their farming, the Kamula raise penned cassowaries for visitors' feasts and special occasions. It's a way of life those in the West, who wring their hands over lost cultures, want to preserve. But it needs the developed world to dig into its own pockets if it's to save this area from sacrifice. The idea is to get the West to pay these people not to allow large-scale logging, and the money's there.
There are some very big cashed-up NGOs. There are some very big cashed-up foundations. There's also international funds such as the Global Environment Facility, which could be in a position to do this type of thing. The question is do those particular foundations or do those international funds want to do this?
If Western conservationists want to keep this land, they'd better hurry up and decide. Some clan chiefs have already signed this land over to the loggers. Despite the new Prime Minister's best intentions, parlous state of PNG's economy means he needs quick cash from these resources. If things don't change, PNG's commercial logging industry will exhaust these supplies in just 15 years. And that at a time when we still don't really know what's lost with these trees.